Welcome and Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Kitshanu B'mitzvotav V'tzivanu La'asok B'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Thank you, thank you. And here we are from yesterday. So we're in the thick of things right now. V'ha'anashim. Okay, so what happened was we just had Caleb saying, "No problem, we're going to be fine. Let's do it. We're going to be able to do this, and we should, trust Moses. And he's taken us this far, and of course we crossed the sea. The sea split, etc. And we've got the man and all those sorts of examples. V'ha'anashim asher alu imo amru, but the men who went up with him said, Lo nuchal la'alot el ha'am. We're not going to be able to go up against this nation. Ki chazak hu mimenu, because they're stronger than us. That's the way, that would be the simplest way to understand this, right? They're stronger than we are, but we'll see. Chazak hu mimenu, they are stronger than us. And what I may have mentioned yesterday is that mimenu can mean than him. That could be third person. So it could be first person plural, or it can be third person singular. So in other words, in Midbar Rabbah it says, Kiviyachol klape mala amru. It's as if they were saying it against God. In other words, they're stronger than God. Vayotziu, and here we go. Vayotziu, let me remove this, by the way. Vayotziu dibat haaretz asher taru ota. And they took out evil reports about the land which they had scouted out. El b'nei Israel, to the children of Israel, saying, Haaretz asher avarnu va la'turota, the land through which we traversed to scout it out. Eretz ochelet yoshvehahi. It is a land that devours its inhabitants. V'chol ha'am asher ra'inu betocha anshe midot. And all the people that we saw within it are men of stature. So, I have a feeling like I left out something, I think.
I have great size.
Yes, that's what it means. Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
No.
Like giants.
Exactly. And they're going to be very specific about it. I feel like there is something I left out. Yes. Did we do this particular one? Yeah, we didn't do 25. I know we didn't. So let's go back and do 25, right? And it says they returned from scouting out the land at the end of 40 days. I'm almost certain we did not do this.
That's
right?
okay. Yeah, 40 days. Yeah.
You'll see. If you remember this, you'll tell me. V'halo arba ma'ot parsa al arba ma'ot parsa he. But the fact is that the land of Israel measures 400 parasangs, 400 Persian miles by 400 parasangs. Umahalach Adam Beinoni, and the average person, the amount an average person walks, Asara Parsaot Layom, is only 10 parasangs in a day. So now, I hope you're visualizing this. We're looking at 400 by 400, okay? And it takes the average person 10 parasangs a day. So just to cross the land of Israel from one side to the other would have taken them 40 days, right? Hare mahalach arba'im yom min hamizrach lama'arav. The fact is that it takes 40 days to go simply from east to west. V'hem alchu arba orka v'rochba, and they traversed its length and its breadth. Ela shagalui lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but it was revealed to the Holy One, blessed be He, sheyigzor alehem yom l'shana, that they would be, that He would have to, uh, sorry, I'm struggling for the translation. He would make an edict against them one day for a year, one day per year. Katsar lifnehem et haderech, and for this reason, God shortened their journeying. In other words, God made it possible for them to traverse the entire land in 40 days, where it should actually have taken considerably longer, because God knew that for every day they traversed, they were going to have to wander in the wilderness for a year. So that way, God actually made them capable of traversing more territory than normal. In other words, God, this is an indication of divine mercy. So I'm pretty sure we did not do that. I don't recollect doing that with you. So, all right, let's go back here. Right. So yes, men of great size. Okay, let's go. So here we are. We're on 32
So
here.
it's
Yeah.
not because there were 12 of them that they traversed it in different paths. They all traversed in the same
Yeah.
as a group together.
Correct.
And didn't divide, because the other point would be if they divided up, then obviously you could do it, right? I mean, now because it's possible to, still it'd be close to 40 days, depending if they got a little bit more than 10 parts, 10 per day. So anyway, but they didn't split up.
Even if they had, if you think it out, remember you've also got the length of the hand and the breadth of the land being 40 parasangs. So,
Right.
if
It's
each one of them
1,500.
is going to cross, you can't divide 40 parasangs by 12 people, and that's going to be 3 parasangs at least, right? 3 something parasangs between each, 3.5 parasangs between each person.
Right, and then it's going to be the other. Right, it is, but it's the other direction. I mean, how you divide the land turns out to be, like you said, 400 by 480. It's 16,000. Yeah,
4,000 square, right? Or 1,600. Yes. Yeah, 40 by 40 would be 1,600 square parasangs.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep. And
So
remember, they cut the fruit and brought it together. Remember, we said 8 of them were carrying just the grapes.
right. So they didn't divide up. Okay.
They didn't split up. No.
Yep. So they had divine powers. Okay. That's Yep. Okay.
The main point of this particular comment is just to say that even though God knew that He was going to ultimately have to punish them, God mitigated the punishment considerably. I mean, considerably, had they taken as long as it normally would have taken to scout out the land. That's the point of the comment, right? I don't think the main point so much is the miracle, or that if there is a miracle, the miracle is the degree to which God was merciful to the Jewish people. I think that's the real point being made here, or the essential point. That what God pays us back isn't what we deserve necessarily. That if we would look at ourselves very truthfully and see to what degree we let God down, given the blessings that we're given every day, I think that's the issue that we're trying to develop, and the sensitivity, so that what happens is we look at the life around us, and instead of complaining, right, because complaining is a big, big thing. And in a way, complaining itself is an act of rebellion against God. And the Israelites are, they complain like 10 times or something like that. And it's seen as a way of testing God. It's understood also. So again, to the degree that I understand this material as trying to speak to us on a personal level, those are sort of the issues that are at stake here. And again, that's not what this class is necessarily about, but to meditating on this particular thing, just to really fill ourselves with a sense of appreciation rather than entitlement. And we see this. This is a very sad commentary on human nature. At any rate,
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. Yep.
Okay, you bet. Right. So we were just reading about the evil reports, and they said this land devours its inhabitants, right, etc. Ochelet yoshveha. In what sense does this land devour its inhabitants? And we're going to be given another example of how God, how instead of interpreting something in a positive way and seeing it as a blessing, where these people are seeing it actually as an excuse to now speak ill of the land of Israel, right? To spread evil reports. Ochelet yoshveha. B'chol makom she'avarnu, every place that we traversed, matzanum kovrei metim, we found them involved in funerals. They were all busy with funerals. So in other words, this place is, it's not a healthy place. People are dying in this particular land. V'hakadosh baruch hu asa latova, but the Holy One, blessed be He, had done this, right? Had gotten them engaged in these funerals for a good purpose. God actually intended it as a positive thing, kedei letardam be'evlam, in order to preoccupy the inhabitants with their mourning, velo yitnu lev la'elo, so that they wouldn't pay attention to these strangers showing up. So they were so distracted. In other words, God used this as a distraction, and instead of understanding it that way, right, because they of where their hearts were, they saw it as a reason to disparage the land and basically say, this land that God has promised you, right? This was the land God promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and their descendants. And in fact, it's a terrible land. It's a land you're not gonna live very long on it. So again, just how we interpret life. Anshe midot, right? So this is the men of great size. Gdolim, they are large. Ugvohim, and they are high, they're tall. V'tzarich latet lahem midah, and so one feels obligated to actually mention their size. They're so large that you feel like you want to say just how big they were. Kagon, for example, they mention in Samuel, first book of Samuel, regarding Goliath, where they say in chapter 17, Govho shesh amot vezeret. I believe that means his height was 6 cubits. I think a zeret is a handbreadth. And of course, a cubit is about 18 inches. So this guy is 9 feet tall, right?
God.
Right?
Yeah.
And a handbreadth or a span. I'm not exactly sure. And when it says that, it could mean this. I'd have to look it up. And likewise, in the second book of Samuel, chapter 21, it says Ish Madon, and it uses this term Madon. And in the book of Chronicles, the first book of Chronicles, it refers to this, possibly the same person as Ish Midah, a man of measurement, right? That one would feel a desire to measure this person, because to be able to express how huge this person is. Vesham ra'inu, and there we saw et ha-nephilim. We saw the Nephilim. B'nai anak min ha-nephilim, and this is like an editorial comment, right? It's saying the children of Anak were of the Nephilim, the Nephilites. V'nehi b'einenu kechagavim, and we looked in our own eyes. We were in our own eyes like grasshoppers. V'chein hayunu be'enehem, and in fact, that's how we looked to them. So, Hanephilim. So, David, were you the one who talked to me about? Were you the one who mentioned the Nephilim before, or am I confusing you?
Not me.
Okay, it may have been someone else by the name of David, actually, in another class. All right. So this the Nephilim, yeah, I think it was in my other midrash class. Anakim mibnei. Okay, these were giants. Mibnei Sham Chazai. Sham Chazai is the name of a demon, right? These were children of Sham Chazai, the Azael, and another. I believe these are names of demons. Shenaflu min hashamayim, who fell from the heavens, bimei dor enosh, during the time, the time or the generation of Enosh. And of course, I know that this, of course, stretches our credulity, but they did believe, there is mention, they did believe in demons, and rather than make fun of them for that, okay, or to disparage people for these beliefs, I would tend to ask myself, well, why did they? What were they trying to explain in this particular way? So, I'm not aware of myself having actually, come across demons. Of course, I wouldn't know if I did, but, I admit that this is, these kinds of statements are difficult for us to be able to swallow. And
Did the Israelites still have that a slave thing in their mind that they're? I mean, I can't understand why they don't follow God, and they're saying, "Well, I've got that slave mentality." If you got a slave mentality, you're not going to do anything.
I don't think so, honestly. I'm not sure that was it, because it seems to me that people who are not slaves and never were slaves have similar attitudes. They don't have they may not have confidence, or they certainly don't have confidence in God, or they don't believe in God. In other words, they don't believe in anything beyond themselves. And look at, for example, we have well documented examples of how people can overcome addiction. And one of the most important steps in overcoming addiction is recognizing that there is a power greater than yourself. And that's something that many people have experienced and understand this. And in a way, I mean, I appreciate your saying what you're saying, because in some ways it leads us to understand better why they talk about demons. And of course, we do use that term for ourselves. We talk about our own demons. Now, they're talking about it in a much more literal way than we do. But nevertheless, there's this sense of things that are outside of ourselves that have a great deal of influence on us. And I'm happy to hear whatever else you want to comment as far as this is concerned. But I don't think it's got to do with slave mentality. I really don't. I think it's got to do with human nature. So Rashi goes in to explain this word anak. Anak. The word anak means a necklace, actually. And here they're called anakites, right? Anakim. And he explains this name as meaning shema'anikim chama bekomatam. That, and lema'anik, to make a verb, right? We don't, necklace, I don't think can be made into a verb, but in Hebrew you can make it into a verb. And so it's basically, they are taking the sun and making it as a necklace. They're wearing the sun as a necklace in their height, given their extreme height. So that's, yeah. Again, this is begging more thought as to, what are they trying to say here? And are there metaphoric explanations of this or interpretations of this that perhaps can in fact speak to us in a deeper kind of sense? At any rate, what's interesting though is the reason, David, I got confused is that I have a midrash class on Wednesday evenings, and we are in that chapter in Bereshit, in Genesis, that talks about the people who, the men, the great men, etc., and the kinds of stuff that preceded the flood. And this particular explanation, the word Anak is found there in Genesis. And in fact, there's a whole little section that talks about the various names for these various different giants. And in fact, this is one of the explanations given back there in Genesis Rabbah of the word Anak, as to why they're called Anakim. So it's kind of cool that here I am reading something in parallel, and there's that connection between another class and a whole different topic. At any rate, it's interesting.
So more people survived the flood than just Noah, because otherwise all these people wouldn't still be here.
Oh, okay. So
That's for another day. That's for another day.
well, we know Og survived.
Right. How could the Nephilim still be there if they were washed out? Yeah. But
So I think back there in Genesis, because it was a very dense part of the Midrash that I was reading at the time. It seems to me that maybe they were referring to some individuals afterwards, but you've got a very good point, Golda, and maybe so. When it says wipe them all out, it doesn't, how rigorous are we talking about?
right. I mean, how could you have the Tower of Babel right afterwards with all of these different people when it's just supposedly Noah's family?
No, they
Just-
are mentioned. They are mentioned because
Yeah, but there's only so many people you can get in so many generations. I mean, there's when you're with a limited DNA source.
Yeah, but Noah had children, and those children had children, and those children had children for over 10 decades, over
Okay.
10 generations.
Well,
So
That gets us to Abraham,
world.
though, so yeah.
let me say this. I think
I like how the timing in Torah can be what's a good word? I can't even
Modified.
Yeah, there you
it can be
go.
modified. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It doesn't always quite fit together.
Golda,
there's a leap of faith literally there.
There, yes.
may I attempt some sort of explanation?
Yes, please.
Did men have multiple wives?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They had multiple
But
wives.
didn't Noah's children only? They didn't say more than one wife. That they only had one wife.
On the
But
ark,
I don't know.
Yes, but even if it was a generation later, okay, they had, and of course they probably were reproducing at an extraordinary rate. But we read about within 3 generations or so, you can read about the number of children, and basically, I think 3 generations later, we're talking about 70 people. Okay, the 70 nations. There's genealogy right there. And of course, from that point on, it can explode. But again, I think that, my overall cautionary statement is taking this stuff too literally, and then by taking it too literally, finding that it totally, challenges our credulity. And then what you do is you put it in a box and say, well, it really has nothing to say. And
can't put it in a box. Can't put God in a box.
Well,
that's our
rule. Put the Torah in the box in this particular case, right? And
can you?
I don't think you can. I mean,
I don't think you can either.
We do the scroll, right? But I don't think conceptually we can.
Yeah, we do put it in the ark, so it is a box, but it's not.
Right, exactly.
Because we can interpret it many ways.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, go ahead.
So I have a question, kind of general, about the what we've been studying lately. So basically what I was thinking about last night was the fact that we're talking to some extent, and I know this is very simplistic, but we're talking about faith here, right? And the spies going in, come back and do what they did. You think about it, back then, you've already God has already represented, miracles multiple times, to the people of Israel, right? And so of course it is going to have to be faith that that they look and say that they'll be able to take the land. And of course the other thing is, which is, I don't know if it's said anywhere, I didn't hear it, but there's probably people that come in to fight this battle. There will be death, right? I mean, so some people will sacrifice their lives in order to regain the land of Israel, right? It's not just like you get to walk in and everybody surrenders, right? So they had to be thinking that to some extent, but to then basically paint it that way and not have that faith when there have been clearly a demonstration to them of the power of God, to me is like, it's the first step in a way, how we've kind of fallen down from that point, right? Because what you also said yesterday was that people don't change, technology changes, right? And now we think, as we've evolved, it's been over 5,000 years since we've seen this kind of direct communication, let's say, from God. We don't have that, and so people's faith has literally diminished, and our technology has helped to actually reduce that, right? So the question is, why why did God let that, why also did God let that happen, right? Why or what in us allowed that to happen, to not even trust God after seeing those kind of miracles, and then to turn around and do this. It doesn't make sense to me. They've already have all the evidence, so why they had to try to go ahead and subvert it? It's not clear why.
Okay.
But
Right. So you're asking some very, important issues. So it has to do, it just goes to show how emotionally based we are, and how important it is for us to check in on our hearts. Now, you asked really more than one question. You asked, how did God make this possible? Let me answer that question. Okay. The answer is that if we lived in a world where a Hitler could not exist, then we would no longer be living in a world where there is that level of freedom of choice for people to make. That if you are going to allow people to choose, then you have to have parameters of that choice, which means that such things are possible. Was it inevitable? No, it wasn't inevitable. The reason, and that's why you have the Torah. In other words, and you have other, and I believe God sends other messages to people that if they have the curiosity, the desire to want to find out about it, they will. Because you can look at technology, and I have to tell you, I am in awe. I'm in awe of, for example, GPS. It totally blows my mind that you have literally millions and millions and millions of people, and you have instruments that are capable of each one of those millions and millions of people to determine the exact location where they are, and to have so much information that can be given to people. And the truth is this, that if in fact we have the right heart, every scientist should be a believer and be in absolute awe of creation, and then being able to make the next step, which is to say, something made this possible. Some great intelligence that is beyond my description made this all possible. That even if you believe in the Big Bang, right? Let's suppose you believe in the Big Bang. You still have to ask yourself the question, well, how did the Big Bang get there? Right?
yeah,
And
totally.
you either accept an infinite regression, you either never, ever, ever, you're willing to accept the concept of an infinite regression, because you're always going to be able to say, well, what caused that, or what caused that? Or you come to the conclusion that there is some transcendent level of existence which is not subject to time in the way the physical world is subject to time. And look, I may be showing extreme naivety, but the truth is, for me, the basis of time is change. In other words, the awareness of state A and then state B or that that state A somehow could become state B is what time is all about. So this essentially is alteration. Time and alteration are, walk in the same place. And if we were not aware of alteration, we would not be. If our minds weren't able to conceive of alteration, then we wouldn't be able to tell time.
Yeah,
No, I
Rabbi,
totally
Next
agree with.
week, Korach.
Oh, oh,
No, go ahead.
yeah, I think the
I
one
wanna ask-
question.
Go
Oh,
ahead.
well,
David,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
so the
Let
one
me stop
question.
the share. Let me stop the share so I can see you all. Hold on a second.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
So the one question I have about that is basically, I agree with all your points. The other part about that I was thinking about was that technology changes, people don't, is that, we've used a lot of our technology has wound up, harming our planet, right? And why would God allow us to do that too, right? Why would he allow us to destroy the ozone layer, to do all the things that we've done relatively in the last, 300 or 400 years to actually harm the planet and then wind up, endangering ourselves? So like you said, every scientist should be a believer. I agree with that. And everything should be developed with the idea of the divine presence and how it takes us one step further. But that's not how it really works, right? And so a lot of our technology is destructive too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pardon?
That's a fact. But again, if we didn't live in such a world, okay, the world would not be worth creating in the first place.
Ah, okay. I
We
see.
have choices. We have choices. Whether good or bad, we're ruining the world for our choices.
Okay. Again, and we can choose not to. Okay. But it's not an answer you give to someone who's suffering. Okay. This is not the answer you give to someone who's suffering, but it is nevertheless, sadly, a truth that we have to be able to wrap our heads around. And again, I think we have to see ourselves, each one of us, as being responsible. There's a beautiful statement that says that every individual should see the fate of the world as hanging in the balance, in a total balance. And you know that when something is complete balance, the smallest little influence on one side, in other words, the world is balanced between good and evil. If I choose to act evilly, just one little individual, tip the entire balance. That's how we should perceive the world. I'm not making this up. This is a tradition. And for that reason, to look at our lives in a very different kind of way. And the point is that the tools are there, David. It would be one thing, your argument would hold water if the tools were not there. Right now, it has more to do with people's allowing their emotions to enslave themselves, okay? And look, all I can do is pray, ultimately. That is actually, again, a traditional Jewish approach to things, is to recognize our limitations and to actually cast our burden onto Hashem and say, listen, I want to try and live my life. You've given me the rules. You've given me my life. You've given me my circumstances. How do I apply your rules? Well, it starts off by reading the Torah. If you don't bother reading it, you're never going to find out. So you have to have that much curiosity. And it doesn't have to be the Torah. I don't care if it's the Dhammapada. I don't care if it's the New Testament. I don't care if it's the Quran. I believe all those are ways in which Hashem has tried to, inspire human beings as to how to live decent lives. And as I said, you need to check in with your heart. So
yeah, and I look at all those like as windows into Hashem, right? I mean, they're all different windows. You want to look at it. That's
right.
And I totally agree that we have the tools. I guess I was just trying to relate it back to why didn't they use the tools, especially since they had the most direct tool, which was direct communication, right? So, and what you're saying, and what you're saying makes sense. We have choice, and so they made a choice. So I guess that's what it boils down to at that point, and that's how our history has evolved. So I appreciate the commentary. So
I have one more thing to add, David. Okay, I love to say that I am an expert when it comes to everybody else. Okay, and you listen to people, but really check into yourself how people are always criticizing other people instead of turning the spotlight onto themselves and our own misbehaviors. So I maybe want to be aware of some of the awful things that are happening, but what I'm really responsible for is the awful things that are happening inside myself, and to be aware of those awful things, rather than, because there are people who are able to avoid facing their own demons, okay, if I may use such a term, facing their own demons by focusing only on what's wrong with the rest of the world. That's a problem. That's a problem. So, yeah, we have to look at this stuff. We have to, everything you say is true, but at the same time, each one of us has to see what we can do. And then, of course, you network, right? You try to network. And there's tremendous power in networking. And Zoom.
And I interrupted Harlan.
Zoom makes fun of that possible.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. We're still recording. Should I get off the recording at this point? Yep. Okay, I'm going to stop.
Sure.